You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down the huge UFC 246 Mcgregor versus Cowboy card, which takes place next Saturday, January 18th, from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, guys, how's everybody doing tonight? I hope you're ready for this episode because I've been waiting to get these predictions out to you for a little bit. I was going to maybe do them last week, but I decided, we'll wait a little bit longer. And I was thinking of maybe doing these the weekend of 246. But like I said, we'll do it a week early just to make sure we get it out and you guys have enough time to listen to it and listen to my breakdowns on the fights coming up. We have one big fight announcement that we're going to cover before we get into the card, and that is the fact that Thug Rose Namajunas is going to be making her return facing Jessica Andrade in a rematch from the bout in which she lost her strawweight championship at UFC 237. She's going to get the rematch, be able to try to right the wrong in the defeat at UFC 249, which takes place on, I believe it's April 18th. Yeah, because it's the same card as Ferguson versus Khabib. And there's also rumors of Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier 2 on that card. And then the only other fight we have confirmed is Uriah Hall versus Jacare Souza in the middleweight division. But I'm so excited for Rose to finally come back. We've been waiting to hear when her next fight was going to be. We thought maybe it was going to be against Weili Zhang for the strawweight championship, but they ended up giving that fight to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So it's going to be Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang at UFC 248. And then I would venture to say that the winner of Andrade and Namajunas would probably get the title shot after that. And I'm really excited that Rose gets this rematch. It's a tough fight for both girls. Rose had a little bit of trouble in that fight, but honestly, I think her striking has never looked any better than it looked in that fight against Andrade. Her jab, her footwork, her angles, her in and out movement, just perfectly on the in and out on the half beat, pop, 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 coming in with that 1-2. In the exchanges with the grappling, she was able to get a hold of her arm and go into an arm bar. I believe Andrade tried the slam one time earlier in the fight. I have a long, detailed breakdown on the finish on I believe it was like the second or third episode of the podcast, so you'd have to go back and listen. But we have the UFC 237 analysis on the podcast, so definitely go out of your way if you haven't listened to that yet. But man, I'm really excited for Rose. I've been waiting for her to come back for a while. I'm a huge fan. She's probably my favorite female fighter in all of mixed martial arts and one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. And I'm excited to see her be able to get the chance to right this wrong and try to get the win back. But that was the biggest fight announcement. There was a couple other ones, but nothing too, exciting or anything like that we haven't talked about already because we did a bunch of episodes on previous fight announcements prior to this episode. But let's go on to the UFC 246 card. Obviously, it's headlined by the return of the notorious Conor McGregor going up to 170 pounds again to take on Donald Cowboy Cerrone. The co-main event, we get Holm versus Raquel Pennington in the women's bantamweight division. And there's some other really good fights on the card. The return of Anthony Showtime Pettis. And then on the prelims, they're definitely good as well. We've got Super Sadiq Youssef versus Andrade Feeley. We've got Roxanne Modafferi versus the undefeated Macy the Future Barber. So there's a lot to get into. So let's jump right into it and start out with the predictions for the card. I'm not going to do every single fight like we say at the beginning of all these predictions. It's going to be mainly the prelims and then the main card. And if there's a couple other fights, maybe on the early prelims, then we'll get into that. But let's start out with the fight in the prelims. Let's give my prediction for this fight. First, it's in the featherweight division. We have Skelly versus Grant Dawson. Skelly has a record of 18-4. Grant Dawson's 14-1. And I haven't seen a lot of these guys' performances lately. Looking at their past fights, Chaz Skelly's last fight was on September 14th. He defeated Jordan Griffin via decision. And then in 2018, he lost to Bobby Moffitt. 2017, he lost to Jason Knight, beat Chris Gritzmacher. And so he's been a little on and off in his career. But, everybody has those those ups and downs throughout their career anyway. Let's go on to the opponent for him, which is Grant Dawson. I haven't seen Grant Dawson fight a lot either, but obviously he's got the better record here with 14-1. And he beat Mike Trizano via submission on May 18th at UFC Fight Night 152. And he also defeated Julian Erosa. I'm going to go with Grant Dawson here. Judging by the resume and everything, I know that his opponent, Skelly, has been in the UFC for a long time. I expect Grant Dawson to just be the quicker, slicker fighter here. More than likely, he'll probably look to get the fight to the ground and get into some grappling. I know Skelly is definitely not a bad grappler in his own right, but I'm going to go with Grant Dawson here to get the win via decision. Up next, we've got a very, very good fight in the lightweight division between Drew Dober and Nasrat Haqparast. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, you guys can butcher me in the comments. But Drew Dober, he's a very good fighter, really good up-and-coming talent in the lightweight division. Both these guys are. Nasrat Haqparast, very, very good wrestler. He's a southpaw, and they're both southpaws, I believe. I'm pretty sure Dober is a southpaw as well, so they're both going to be looking to wing that left hand. But when it comes to who I think is the better fighter, just judging on what I've seen from both guys, I think Haqparast is definitely the better grappler out of the two. I think he's able to transition between the striking and the grappling better and more fluently than Drew Dober. Dober's got some very, very scary power, though. If he lands on your chin, it could be lights out very easily for anybody that he's fighting. Obviously, he's got a win via first-round knockout over Marco Polo Reyes, which was on June 29th. He lost to Beneil Dariush via a submission. But this is a very, very good fight in the lightweight division. Like I said, two very good prospects, and I'm just excited to see it. If I had to pick a winner here, let's see what Nasrat Haqparast's last few wins were. I know I saw in his debut, he got the decision win over Mark Jacasey. He beat Joaquim Silva via knockout on UFC on ESPN 5. But honestly, I'm going to go with Nasrat Haqparast here. A lot of people like to call him Kelvin Gastelum's twin. That doesn't really mean anything. But when you look at his highlights, he is pretty light on the feet in that southpaw stance. He likes to wing that overhand left, and he has good entry into double legs and single leg takedowns. I just think Nasrat is like I said, the overall better fighter. I think he's going to land the bigger shots on the feet. And one of the biggest things I think separates these two guys is Dober's got a lot of power, but I think Nasrat is more fluid on the feet. And usually when you got two guys who can hit pretty hard, unless the guy unless one of them can just land a power shot and knock him out, which that's really the only way I see Drew Dober winning this fight, I think Nasrat is just going to be able to pick him apart with jabs and straight lefts from range. When Drew Dober tries to come in, I think he's going to go for a double leg or a single leg, get him against the fence, and try to get him into grappling exchanges. So yeah, I'm going to go with Nasrat Haqparast to get the win here. I'm going to go a second round TKO. I think the grappling is going to leave Drew Dober open for some shots up top. I think maybe he fakes a takedown, comes over with a power overhand left, puts it on the jaw of Drew Dober, knocks him out, or gets a TKO finish. So yeah, I'm going to go with Nasrat Haqparast to get the win via a second round TKO. But I'm excited for this fight. This is a very good fight, and it's being overlooked by a lot of people, I think. What's next on the card? Let's see what's next. The prelims are great for this card. Really, really good. I think they could have put one of these fights on the main card, but we'll get to that later. And it's actually the next fight up. In the featherweight division, we have Andrade Touchy Feeley versus Super Sadiq Youssef. This fight should have definitely been on the main card. I think Sadiq Youssef is one of the biggest, brightest prospects currently that you have in the entirety of the UFC, not just the featherweight division. Andrade Feeley's very good as well. He has a bit of a rough patch in his career. He's got a couple wins, a couple losses, back and forth. But just coming off of his last few fights, he's on a bit of a win streak. He has wins over Shaman Moraes via first-round KO, a win over Miles Jury via decision, and he lost to Michael Johnson, and then he beat Dennis Bermudez. So judging on better opponents, it's Andrade Touchy Feeley all day. They're both southpaws. Or no, you know what? No, I think Feeley's a southpaw, and Sadiq Youssef is a conventional fighter. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, forgive me. But I was watching a couple of their highlights because I was really interested in this fight. And you know what I noticed? I watched Sadiq Youssef's last fight against, it was at UFC 241. He faced, what's his name? I can't remember who he fought. Let's see. We're going to pull it up real quick just so I can get this for you. So he beat Gabriel Benitez. That was it. And he got hurt by Benitez in that first round. Benitez, I believe, caught him with a left hook and stumbled him as he came in. And you could see it kind of, hurt him a little bit. But one thing I like about Sadiq is he's very patient. He does walk you down and he does stalk you, but he's got pressure with the patience as well. So he'll walk you down. He'll put his hands out to try and measure the range. And then he'll come up, rip some combinations. He'll walk you back. He'll just push back, keep pushing forward, and try to put you under a lot of pressure and have you jump the gun, throw something you don't want to jump, or throw something you don't want to throw, and then he'll come back and counter you. And this is a very close fight. At first, I was going to go with Sadiq Youssef to just run right through Andre Feeley, but just based off his last few wins alone, you cannot discount a guy like Andre Touchy Feeley. Obviously, he's been a longtime trainer, longtime training partners at Team Alpha Male, guys like Cody No Love Garbrandt, Uriah Faber, Josh Emmett. So he trains with a lot of good guys. He's seen a lot of good guys in the training room all the time. And he has very good kicks, but Sadiq Youssef has very good calf kicks. I think that if Sadiq's able to get the calf kicks off early, we saw him use it on his Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series fight. And I think Sadiq has more power, but Feeley hits pretty hard as well for him. And it's such a tough fight to pick. I'm gonna go with Sadiq Youssef. I think that it's gonna be a decision. At first, I was thinking a finish, but the more you look at it, you cannot discount a guy like Andre Feeley and some of the good wins he's had in his career. He's a very good striker. He's got a lot of power, and he's probably the more well-rounded fighter out of the two. But I just think Sadiq Youssef is going to be able to just outpoint him. It's such a tough. I was going back and forth for the last few minutes on this one, but I'm going to go with Sadiq. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to go a split decision. I think it'll be a close fight. I could definitely see Feeley getting the win here just by outlanding Sadiq Youssef and putting him under pressure. I think that Andre Feeley has a really good gas tank and really good cardio. We haven't seen anything that suggests that Sadiq Youssef has bad cardio, but we haven't really seen him in the later rounds, and stuff like that. So it could be a problem for him. And like I said, it could go either way, but I'm going to go with Super Sadiq Youssef. Up next, we have a fight in the women's flyweight division. It is going to headline the prelims on ESPN. It is Roxanne Modafferi versus Macy the Future Barber. I don't want to discredit Roxanne Modafferi here. She's a pioneer of women's MMA. She was on The Ultimate Fighter, got to the finale, ended up winning the season, I believe. Unless I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure she won the season of The Ultimate Fighter. Or no, you know what? She lost to Nico Montano. She got to the finals and then lost to Nico Montano, which we haven't really seen a lot or heard a lot from her in the UFC. She's had a lot of issues lately. Macy Barber has looked fantastic. Obviously 8-0 in the UFC, undefeated. I believe she's only 22, maybe 21 or 22 years old. 21, yeah, so she was born in 1998. But she has a lot of power for this women's flyweight division. And I don't really know. I honestly feel like they're feeding Roxanne Modafferi to the wolves here. I think they want to build up Macy Barber, and knocking off a girl like Roxanne Modafferi, who's been around, been one of the pioneers of women's MMA. I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Roxanne's probably going to come out and look to shoot a takedown right away. And you can't really get into grappling exchanges with Modafferi because she will tie you up and she will submit you. She is that good on the ground. Very, very good grappler. But on the feet, it's Macy Barber's fight to win all day. And I think she hurts her right away in the first round. I think there's maybe one or two exchanges. Macy Barber lands a vicious combination, stuns her, gets her up against the fence, rips shots to the body, comes up top and gets a TKO in the first round and improves to 9-0 in the UFC. I see a lot of big things for Macy Barber in the future, and I think the future is now. So Roxanne Modafferi will be knocked out in the first round by Macy Barber. Up next, we're going to move to the main card, the juicy main card. It's not the best main card, especially with Conor McGregor being in your main event position, but it's definitely good enough. So let's start out with the first fight. It's in the lightweight division. It's the return of Anthony Showtime Pettis versus Carlos Diego Ferrara. This is a very tough fight for Anthony Pettis. Carlos Diego Ferrara is a very good fighter. He has a lot of good wins. He has a win via decision over Marabek Taisimov. He has a win over Rustam Habalov. He has wins over guys like Kyle Nelson, Jared Gordon, and stuff like that. I think that the UFC in this fight, I think a lot of people are discounting Anthony Pettis and not giving him the credit that he deserves. I mean, you look at the guys, he has lost a lot of fights in his career, but when you look at the caliber of guys he lost to Nate Diaz, he lost to Tony Ferguson, he lost to, you name it, Rafael Dos Anjos, he beat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Obviously, he was getting picked apart in that fight, but the leg kicks were just enough to stifle Stephen Thompson for a second and allow him to land that Superman punch and knock him out. And then he beat guys like he beat Michael Chiesa. That was one of his best performances recently, I think, aside from the Stephen Thompson fight. And he had a very good performance in the Ferguson fight, too. He stunned Tony Ferguson. And I think a lot of people are discounting Anthony Pettis here. And I could see why, because he's been so hot and cold in his career. A lot of wins, a lot of losses. And I think people just think that they're going to feed him to Carlos Diego Ferrara and expect him to lose. I don't expect Anthony Pettis to lose this fight. I expect him to come out, look rejuvenated. He said that he's been rejuvenated a lot throughout his career, and usually it doesn't work out too well for him. But I see some good things. I see a lot of good things for Anthony Pettis in this fight. I think he's the better striker, obviously, overall, and I think he's the better grappler. I think they're both very good They're both very good fighters. That goes without saying, and Carlos Diego Ferrara has the better record, but Pettis has been in there with everybody. He's been in there with Cowboy Cerrone. He's been in there with Tony Ferguson. He's been in there with Nate Diaz. He's been in there with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's been in there with, the who's who of mixed martial arts. And a lot of people are discounting him. And I don't really see a reason to discount Anthony Pettis in this fight. So I'm going to go with Anthony Pettis to get the win here. I'm going to go with a third round. No, you know what? I'm going to go with a second round TKO. Like I said, Carlos Diego Ferrara is a dangerous guy. He can land some really big shots and hurt Anthony Pettis if he wants to, and can get it to the ground. But on the ground, Pettis is amazing as well. So I would expect Anthony Pettis to get the win here. And yeah, I'm going to go with a second round TKO. Maybe he drops some, goes for a submission. But I'm backing Anthony Showtime Pettis here. And I think a lot of people are discounting him. Up next, it's a fight in the women's strawweight division. We have Claudia Gadelha versus Alexa Grasso. Claudia Gadelha 17-4, Alexa Grasso 11 wins, 3 losses. Grasso looked really good when I saw her perform at UFC 238 against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She had a very good win there. Her boxing looked amazing, and her footwork and her in and out movement. She lost a fight to Carla Esparza, which could prove to be problematic against a girl like Claudia Gadelha. I think Claudia Gadelha on the feet is very good, but I believe her bread and butter is going to be on the ground. And I think that this is where she can give Alexa Grasso a lot of trouble. She's a good striker, obviously, but I would give the advantage in the striking to Alexa Grasso just because of her boxing and her in and out head movement, and her hands are so quick for that division. But on the ground, I have to give the advantage to Claudia Gadelha. Gadelha obviously is coming off a win over Randa Marcos. She lost to Nina Ansaroff and then she beat Carla Esparza. Okay, I thought she lost to Carla Esparza. I think a lot of people thought Carla Esparza won that fight, but they ended up giving the decision to Claudia. But this is a good fight for the women's division, for that strawweight division. I don't expect either of these girls to get a title shot in the near future, but who would benefit more off of a win here would be Alexa Grasso. And I'm going to actually pick Alexa Grasso to get the win here. I think she's going to be able to keep Claudia Gadelha off her with her good jab. She has a very good jab and can fire that 1-2 down the pipe and try to get away. But since she did have some trouble with Carla Esparza and the grappling, I could easily see Claudia Gadelha just out grappling her and out muscling her. But I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso to get the win via decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. It's going to be a tough fight nonetheless for both girls. But I just think Alexa Grasso is just that one little step ahead on the feet, and it's going to lead her to a victory against Claudia. Up next in the heavyweight division, we have Olynyk versus Maurice the Crochet Boss Greene. Olynyk has 57 wins, 13 losses, and 1 no contest. Maurice Greene, 8 wins, 3 losses. This looks like a mismatch on paper, but when you look at Olynyk, he's had a lot of losses and a lot of losses via KO. I mean, he lost to Walt Harris via first-round KO. He lost to Alistair Overeem via first-round KO last year. He beat Mark Hunt. He beat Junior Albini via submission. He beat, who else? Who else has he beaten in his career? He lost to Curtis Blades. He beat Travis Brown. And he beat Victor Pesca, however you say his name. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't really know in this fight. I haven't seen much out of Maurice Greene. I believe I saw his last fight where I don't know who he fought. He lost to Sergey Pavlovich via first-round knockout, and then he beat Junior Albini via first-round knockout, beat Jeff Hughes via decision. I just think that this is kind of a mismatch for Maurice Greene. I know people might be backing him here just because of the losses that Olynyk has had, but Olynyk has over 70 fights. I mean, you can't discount a guy who's got 71 fights against a guy who's only been in there 11 times. I think Maurice Greene can hurt him on the feet because I think that Olynyk's chin is suspect. But I'm going to say that Olynyk is going to be able to get this to the ground, and he's going to sync up one of his submissions. And I'm going to go with Olynyk to get the win via a first-round submission over Maurice Greene. Up next in the co-main event of the evening, we have a women's bantamweight fight between the former women's bantamweight champion, the preacher's daughter, Holly Holm, and the former title challenger for Amanda Nunes, Raquel Pennington. This is a good fight for both girls. I think it's a good fight to make in this current time period. Obviously, Holly Holm has a loss to Amanda Nunes. Raquel Pennington has a loss to Amanda Nunes as well. And I believe that both of their last fights were losses to the champion. Let's see. So she beat Irene Aldana via decision. So that's actually looks very good for Raquel Pennington. I think Irene Aldana could be one of the next women's bantamweight champions in 2020 or 2021. But she lost to Germaine Durandamy and lost to Amanda Nunes, the champion. And Holly Holm, I think on the feet, you got to give the advantage to Holly Holm. She's just always usually the better striker out of anybody she fights. However, against Germaine Durandamy, I thought she won the fight against Germaine. I thought she landed the bigger shots. Obviously, Germaine landed those shots at the end of the rounds that were controversial. It seemed like they were after the bell, but it is what it is. I'm going to go with Holly Holm to get the win here. I know she's been really hot and cold ever since she got that huge win over Ronda Rousey at UFC 193. Win one, lose one, win one, lose one, lose one, win one. That's kind of been the story of her. And Raquel Pennington's record isn't the greatest, but she does have good boxing. But I just think Holly Holm is the better fighter here. On the ground, I give the advantage to Raquel Pennington. On the feet, it's Holly Holm all day. So I'm going to go with Holly Holm to get the win via decision here. I think she fights smart. I think she keeps Raquel Pennington at a distance with those kicks to the thigh, side kicks to the thigh, the oblique kicks and kicks to the body, the Jackson Winklejohn special. And yeah, I'm going to go with Holly Holm to get the win via decision. And then in the main event of the evening, the return of the notorious Conor McGregor as he comes back and battles Donald Cowboy Cerrone in the 170-pound division. This is a very, very good fight. A lot of people were discounting Donald Cerrone right off the bat. Oh, my God, Cerrone's going to get destroyed. Cerrone's going to get murdered. Cerrone's going to get crushed. It's possible. And, I'm leaning towards Cerrone losing this fight. But judging on the fact that the fight is at 170, Cerrone has had so much more experience and so much more success in the welterweight division that I think that the weight class favors Cerrone. The fight and the matchup favors Conor McGregor, but the weight class favors Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And I'm going to be honest, if Cerrone wants to get the win here, he's going to have to grapple, and he's going to have to grapple right off the bat. As soon as that bell rings, he's going to have to maybe start with a couple leg kicks and then immediately try to shoot a takedown. He has a very good double leg. He's got a really good power double. He lands it on a lot of guys, and he's got good striking. But the one thing that worries me about Donald Cerrone, and I've said it in almost every single one of his fights, is when Donald Cerrone gets pressured, he can do well under certain aspects, but 9 out of 10 times when Cerrone's getting pushed back and pressured and the guy's just on him, he doesn't have good defense. He has good offense, but his defense has never really been that great. And one of the reasons why is because when guys throw shots at him, he tends to just pull his head back and kind of drop his hands a little bit and try to lean out of the way. Doing this against a guy like the notorious Conor McGregor is setting yourself up for failure. If you lean back against a guy like Conor, he's just going to time your range, get the range, get the distance, and extend that left hand and catch you on the lean. And that's what I expect him to do against Cerrone here. I just watched his last pad session that he just did. He just put out a video yesterday or the day before hitting pads, prior to this fight. And he had a light on the feet, hopping in and out style, side to side. And it looked like the old Conor McGregor. It wasn't anything too crazy, but just him moving around, light on the feet, in and out, side to side, cutting angles was enough for me to know that Conor McGregor is taking this fight seriously. And honestly, I think he's going to knock out Donald Cerrone in the first round. Like I said, Cerrone can get the win here. The head kicks and the leg kicks could be a very good weapon for Donald Cowboy Cerrone. But you have to look out for the leg kicks, because if you overextend on a leg kick and Conor's out of range, he'll time you with that left hand, or he'll loop you with that right hook to direct you into the straight left. And I expect Donald Cowboy Cerrone to try to shoot a few times. He's got to try to shoot a takedown immediately in this fight. You cannot stand and bang with Conor McGregor. Cerrone's a good striker, but Conor is just above him. I believe, like I said, Cerrone is the more well-rounded fighter, but I just think Conor McGregor has too good of striking and too much power for Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Cerrone's been lost his last 2 fights, one via a knockout in the first round, I believe, from Justin Gaethje, and the second one, and the one prior to that, was a loss to Tony Ferguson at UFC 238, and he was getting pieced up in that fight. And, I just think that this is a good fight for Conor. I expect to see Conor return to form here, and I think he gets a first-round knockout. I think he pushes Cerrone back. I think Cerrone tries to shoot a takedown. Conor stuffs it, shoves him off. He goes for another takedown. Conor maybe times it with that front kick to the body. Go to the body on Cerrone with those teep kicks, kind of try to take the wind out of him, and then he lands that left hand on Cowboy, puts him down, and gets the win via first-round knockout. Like I said, good fight. A lot of people discounting Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I don't believe that's the right thing to do. You cannot discount Cerrone, but this is a very, very tough matchup for him. If Cerrone were to win, I would expect him to win via submission. Like I said, on the ground, it's Donald Cerrone's advantage all day. But Conor McGregor is not a slouch of a grappler either. A lot of people like to discount it and say he has terrible grappling. But if you go back and watch the fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov, he did stuff a few of Khabib's takedowns. And Dustin Poirier didn't really stuff any of the takedowns from Khabib, and he kind of just got ragdolled. He had some good moments in the fight, and I expected Dustin Poirier to win that fight. But going and seeing what Khabib did to Dustin and then seeing what he did to Conor, Conor looked pretty good in that fight, and I think that performance, holds up a little bit. But yeah, those are my predictions for UFC 246. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to listen to any of my breakdowns I've done previously on the podcast, I have breakdowns on fighters such as Piotr Jan, Dan the Hangman Hooker, Dustin Poirier, Thug Rose Namajunas, Jorge Gamebred Masvidal, Kelvin Kattar, so many guys, Dominic the Dominator Cruz, and many more are to come in the future. So if you liked this podcast, definitely get it out to your friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, anybody you got who's a fan of mixed martial arts or professional wrestling. Get this out to them and tell them about the Touch 'Em Up podcast. That's TOUCH_EMUP ! Available wherever audio podcasts are distributed. I'm your host, Double M. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast, and thank you for your support, and I'm out. Have a good night, everybody, all right?